Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. It was a great day of hoops, which is basically the norm at this point ever since the All-Star break. We've gotten non-stop action across the association, and we had 4 nationally televised games today that were all really good, a bunch of great League Pass matchups, and everything in between. In fact, we had the most 30-point per game scores on any night in NBA history today. So we've got a lot to go ahead and get into. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start things off with Knicks versus Celtics, which is probably the best of the 4 nationally televised games that we got on this day. All of them were good, but this one went to double overtime. It was a matchup of a couple of squads that are both fighting for Eastern Conference playoff seeding, and it went all the way down to the wire. Big shots, big mistakes left and right, as you typically see with these high-level matchups. The Knicks end up coming out on top over the course of the double overtime in a game where they didn't have Jalen Brunson, who has arguably been their best player for most of the season. Julius Randle had a pretty solid performance with 31 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists on 50% shooting, although I will say that came with 7 turnovers, which is a concern when he plays without Jalen Brunson. One of the biggest reasons why the Knicks have been better this year is having a lead guard like JB to go ahead and take the ball out of Randle's hands some of these times, allow him to focus a little bit more on what he typically does. Today, he had to be forced to create a lot more opportunities, which led to 7 turnovers, including a really brutal one at the end of regulation where the Knicks had a chance to go ahead and hit a game winner, prevent any overtime. Julius Randle was backing down Grant Williams, and JB, Jalen Brown that is, just poked the ball away from him to go ahead and force a turnover and send the game to OT. He's made that mistake a few times, I feel like, recently. He's got to go ahead and learn from that, and I think he will, but this isn't going to be a regular occurrence because Jalen Brunson will hopefully be back soon. RJ Barrett also stepped it up in the absence of Brunson with 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 dimes. He was really solid. He didn't do much outside of the first few minutes of the fourth quarter. Mainly, he got a lot of momentum for the Knicks in the first. He was on fire, maybe their best player in that period, but overall, he just didn't do too much down the stretch. He was a bit quieter. However, his defense was pretty consistently solid. But the true hero of the game was Emmanuel Quickley, who got the start in the absence of Brunson and had the best game of his career. He played 55 minutes and did not sit after halftime. His stat line he finished with was 38 points, which is a career high, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and 4 steals, while scoring 7 out of the Knicks' 10 total points in the double overtime period. He's flown so far under the radar this season. I feel like very few people have talked about just how great of a season he's been having, and in my opinion, although he did start in this one, so I'm not counting this performance in particular, he should be in the conversation to win 6th Man of the Year, actually with this game, which once again he started in, so I don't quite understand, but he actually made a leap to be now the favorite on most betting sites as the guy to win 6th Man of the Year, which I think he's absolutely deserving of that consideration, because while he's not having performances like this on a nightly basis off the bench, he's making a similar impact. He's scoring at a high level, defending at a very high level. I think he should be in some all-defensive conversations, although being a bench player, he won't get that type of recognition. There's some great defensive guards, but I do think eventually he could be that caliber of player, and he's building up his resume as the season goes on. He has been so good and one of the biggest X factors for a Knicks team that is proving me absolutely wrong. Because with this win, the Knicks are now on a 9-game win streak and undefeated since acquiring Josh Hart at the trade deadline, who has been another great piece of this team, why they've been so successful as of late. Like I said, 9-0 since they brought him in, mainly due to his defensive hustle, his tenacity. He's always been like a superstar caliber role player where any team that gets him is going to immediately be better, in my opinion. I think he's great in this bench role that he's playing right now for the Knicks, where they can just rely on him to come in, bring some energy, some hustle, grab some boards, knock down some threes. He really feels like the prototypical Tom Thibodeau player, and so it makes a ton of sense that the New York Knicks went out and picked him up at the deadline. In this win streak of 9 games that they've had, they're winning by an average of 12.8 points per game, which is really good, and it's been against some teams that they're fighting with in the Eastern Conference for seeding. Like I said, a couple against the Celtics, who they're not going to catch, but that is a team they could end up facing in the playoffs, so getting those reps and those wins is very important. Had a couple of blowout wins over the new-look Brooklyn Nets, who are also in that 5-7 range in the Eastern Conference. They got a big win against the Miami Heat, who they're directly next to in the standings due to a Julius Randle game winner that absolutely still does not make sense. It even kind of might bring double bang. That's how improbable it was. Yeah, they've been really good. They're now 12 games over 500 with less than 20 games to go. A spot that I never thought they'd be in. I said a little bit earlier they're proving me wrong. They're exactly doing that. To be honest, even when they brought in Jalen Brunson, I saw this team as a bit more of like a 10 or a 9 seed, maybe even up to like an 8 seed if they had a really good season in this year's playoffs. but I did not see them being as good as they are. A legitimate 5, maybe even 4 seed if they can catch Cleveland, who they're only 1 game behind in the standings. And with the way that they're winning 9 games straight with a decently easy schedule coming up, there's a chance they could pass Cleveland and have home court in the first round. A sentence I really never thought I'd be saying for this season. To me, Brunson, I knew he was going to be good. I liked the signing, and I did think he made them a much better team, but I didn't think it was going to be enough to catch some of the other squads in the Eastern Conference. Although I didn't account for just how good Brunson would be. He has shattered basically all of my expectations for him this season. But even still, also his impact on other players, like Julius Randle is having the best season of his career, even past that most improved player season that he had a couple years ago. He's once again an all-star, and I think part of that is the play of Jalen Brunson, the way that he plays off of him works really, really well for this Knicks squad. Randle himself deserves a ton of credit for the way that he has bounced back from a really mediocre campaign, I guess I would say. It wasn't terrible, but in terms of expectations building off of his most improved player in all NBA season, it wasn't good. A lot of Knicks fans turned on him, and that could have been the start of his decline. Instead, it was the catalyst for the best season of his career. Another reason alongside Brunson why they've been so good. You've also gotten great moments from guys like Emmanuel Quickley, who I mentioned, who at this point is probably the front runner for Sixth Man of the Year with this national TV performance. Although once again, like I said, he did start in the game, so it really shouldn't contribute. But regardless, it probably will in a lot of voters' minds. Other guys like Quentin Grimes, for example, has been great in a lot of starts so far this season, playing good defense, knocking down some shots. Mitchell Robinson, when he's been healthy, which isn't always, but when he's on the court, he's been really solid too. Miles McBride has been great as a bench guard, playing some solid defense. RJ Barrett, while he hasn't broken out to be a star after getting that bag in the offseason, he still had a solid season, had some big moments, like I said, 29 points tonight in the absence of Jalen Brunson. Also defensively, he's had some really good moments. There still are some times where he gets lost off ball or just kind of misses a rotation and falls asleep, but on ball, he's had a lot of really solid moments against some really good players, which helps them continue to find this identity of this hard-nosed team that really is going to make things difficult for you basically every game. So it's all those guys, other players like Obi Toppin, Jericho Sims, to name a few more. So many people have contributed to this Knicks team, the success that they're having. Tom Thibodeau has done a great job as a head coach. He was honestly one of the guys I thought was most on the hot seat going into the season. If the Knicks had disappointed basically all year, I could have seen them going into the next season with a new head coach. Instead, he has once again shown that he's probably one of the best leaders possible for this group of guys. They're still a relatively young team. It seems like there's a bright future brewing in New York. All things that I really didn't think were the case before the season. But I'm glad they're proving me wrong, and they're doing it in a really big way. Now, while they are really good, I don't quite see them as championship contenders quite yet. I think they still need that third star alongside Brunson and Randle to truly solidify this team, although I think there is a lot clearer path to them becoming that contender through bringing in a star than there was previously. Mainly because they have now established themselves as potentially a desirable destination for a star or superstar player that wants a trade to end up. Already, they've got a great package of a bunch of first-round picks and some really intriguing young assets, but in today's market, it's more important than ever to be desirable to a star, even if it is a trade. Because a lot of teams, if you're trading one of your best players, they want to do right by them. If they give them a list of destinations like, okay, I want to go here, here, and here, maybe it's more likely now with the Knicks' success that the Knicks will be on that list. A team's not going to send, like, say, a Pascal Siakam ends up requesting a trade, or the Raptors are just like, hey, we're going to move on from you this offseason. Where do you want to go? Maybe Siakam is like, hey, Madison Square Garden wouldn't be a bad place to go. If the Clippers end up flaming out in the playoffs early and Kawhi or Paul George request a trade, or they just decide to move on from one or both of them, maybe the Knicks are a solid destination that one of those two guys could want to go and play in. Now, all of this is just hypothetical. I'm not saying any of these guys will be moved or that the Knicks are going to be the number one team on their list. I just think it's a lot more likely now than it was coming into the season. Regardless of what the future holds, right now the Knicks are really fun, and I'm super happy they're proving me wrong. They're a younger team that's bursting onto the scene behind the star play of Jalen Brunson, who bet on himself and has worked out fantastically, Julius Randle, who's bounced back from a really rough season last year, and a cast of really solid players around them. If the standings stay the way that they are right now, the Knicks would face off against the Cavaliers in the first round, which I think would be a super fun, grinded out type of series. I think it could really go 6 or 7 games with either team winning, although I would probably lean Cleveland a little bit, mainly because they have Donovan Mitchell, who I feel like would be particularly invested in beating the Knicks because that was one of the spots that he could have been traded to, and also Donovan Mitchell has proven to be basically basically unstoppable when he does get to the playoffs, so I would probably pick Cleveland in that series, but the Knicks have a great cast of guys that I would not be shocked if they end up making it out of the first round for the first time in what feels like forever. Moving on from that game, I want to quickly cover the Thunder versus Jazz game because you know I have to. It was one of the best games that we've seen from the Thunder probably all season. Shea came back from injury and COVID, a really rough combination of things to come back from, but it looked like he didn't miss a single game whatsoever because he still absolutely went off. 38 points, 7 boards, and 4 assists. He didn't miss a step. Josh Giddey also had one of his best games of the season, maybe the best that he's had all year, with 24 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. He was incredible. The two of them, one of the best games that they've had as a backcourt. They continue to really figure things out and look incredibly dangerous. Then there's Jalen Williams, who funnily enough, I just put a video out on yesterday. Make sure to go check that out if you want to hear more about him. But he just had the best game of his career, 32 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. That 32 is a career high, by the way. First Thunder rookie to put up a 35-5 game since Russell Westbrook, and only the third total, joining him and Kevin Durant. Unbelievable stuff. He has been so good. He has, in my opinion, reached the point where he's firmly second in the Rookie of the Year race. I think he could even pass Paolo by the end of the year. Maybe that's just my bias talking, but I really do believe that J-Dub has made such an immeasurable impact on this Thunder team. One of the biggest reasons why we've exceeded almost everybody's expectations. I think he's going to be an all-star someday, and the fact that we got him and Chet Holmgren in the same draft absolutely blows my mind. The Thunder have the best young core in the league. Argue the wall. As for the Jazz, they got a number of solid double-digit scoring performances, but without Lauri Markkanen, they weren't going to win this game. And to be honest, it kind of feels like they're on the verge of falling out of the play-in and will probably be one of the teams that gets replaced by some of the other squads beneath them. It's not a guarantee or anything. It just feels like to me they're starting to fall off a little bit. They've been dealing with a bunch of injuries. Like I said, Lowry out for this game. Jordan Clarkson missed some time. They traded off Mike Conley. They traded off Jared Vanderbilt, some of their really solid role players. To me, it just feels like they're destined to end up falling out of the play-in despite the great season that they've had. Moving on, we had Suns versus Mavericks, which saw Phoenix get another win, still undefeated in the Kevin Durant era. And it's mainly due to the play of him and Devin Booker, who have been lethal as a duo. It's almost impossible to stop them when they really both get going because you have to double one of them, get the ball in their hands, but you can't double both of them at the same time. Otherwise, there's two guys that are completely wide open, which was the case at some points with Chris Paul, who had some big shots as well to combine with those guys. Ish Wainwright had a massive stretch in the fourth quarter where he hit 3 or 4 threes that really swung the momentum. The Mavericks did what they could. They gave it a lot of tough offensive punches, but in the end, it just wasn't enough. Their defense kind of failed them, which is understandable when you're facing Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I don't think many defenses at all can end up stopping this duo, which is what makes Phoenix so dangerous and one of my favorites to come out of the Western Conference and win the title as a whole. Which brings me to the point, I want to see these two teams in a series so bad. At the end of the game, Luka had a really wide open look right under the basket to tie it and potentially send it to overtime, but he missed it, and Devin Booker started talking to him. The two of them got in each other's faces. They don't like each other, which is great for basketball. I love when we see these rivalries between two guys. Of course, there was the playoff series this past year where the Suns got blown up by 50 points on their home court in Game 7 after having their best regular season record of all time. I'm sure the Suns remember that. I'm sure the Mavericks do. You've also got the whole KD versus Kyrie narrative. There's just a lot going for this series in addition to what I think would be some really fun basketball. So fingers crossed, the basketball gods let us see this in a 6, maybe even 7 game series. Next up, we've got Lakers versus Warriors, which saw Anthony Davis lead the way in a win with 39 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. He was completely dominant. This is the type of AD they need night in and night out, with LeBron James dealing with that 2.5 week injury if they want to maintain their spot fighting for the play-in tournament. I think he can do so, as well as some of the other role players are helping in a big way. Austin Reeves has been great. Jared Vanderbilt has had great game after great game. He was phenomenal again. Troy Brown Jr. continues to be one of the most unsung heroes of this Lakers squad. Just so many guys have stepped up in a big way for the Lakers. It feels like they've really built a roster that can support themselves even when LeBron's dealing with injury, or also D'Angelo Russell has not played in a little bit. Whether they head into the playoffs or the lottery this season, they're in a great spot for years to come. Meanwhile, for Golden State, they just cannot figure out how to win on the road. They just had a 5-game win streak and a 5-game homestand. The second they get on the road, it looks like they completely forget how to play basketball. They're just no longer the Golden State Warriors. I can't quite explain it. It feels weird for a team that's coming off of a championship and has a lot of really experienced veteran guys, but whatever it is on the road, they need to figure it out because it's hard to take them seriously as a real championship contender if they can't win games on the road, which is basically a necessity in the playoffs. Real quick, want to give a shout to the Los Angeles Clippers, who got their first win of the Russell Westbrook era. They're led by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who combined for 76 points. If these two guys can do this, the Clippers are hard to beat, although I will say it was against a Memphis team that's without without Ja Morant to the whole Instagram story situation, as well as Dillon Brooks, who is serving his 1-game suspension due to having too many technical fouls, which is kind of hilarious. But they were down by a big margin. They gave up 51 points in the third quarter to this team. Tyus Jones himself had 20. It looked like they were going to lose. They were down by double digits. And to their credit, they fought back in a big way in the fourth quarter. They didn't give up. They do have to be better, especially defensively. You can't give up 51-point quarters in the playoffs, especially not to a team without Ja Morant or, like I said, Dillon Brooks. But I do think that this is a good momentum win for the Clippers that can maybe help them kind of find some footing. To wrap things up, the Pacers beat the Bulls off a game-winning 3 from basically the logo by Tyrese Halliburton. The Blazers beat the Magic by 3 behind Damian Lillard dropping 41 points. The Nets blow out the Hornets behind another great game from Mikal Bridges. He's just been so good since he got to Brooklyn. The Rockets destroyed the Spurs led by Jalen Green's 31. And finally, the Bucks beat the Wizards behind Giannis, securing a triple-double. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I mean, you made it to the end of the video, so I'm going to guess that you did. It helps out the channel a ton. Also, comment down below letting me know, how do you think the Knicks are going to fare in the playoffs this season? Do you think they win their first round matchup, make it to the conference finals, or maybe even go further if you're very bold? Regardless, I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real and safe back.